Hello, you. It's me. And I found this picture. I just thought it was a nice picture. Oh, us wicked people. Anyway, I wanted to talk a little bit about the windows being covered in the home where Dee Dee and the evil Gypsy lived. Ken said, I guess accidentally, that those were put up there. They were covered with tinfoil because because Dee Dee didn't want anyone to see Gypsy walking around inside the house. And what Gypsy said, she said, no, he misspoke. CPS had been called on them, so Dee Dee covered the windows because she was paranoid that people were going to look in. And I guess she's hinting at the idea that Dee Dee might abuse her, Gypsy, and Dee Dee didn't want anyone to see. But I want to know the real reason why the windows were covered. And I know that when I was younger and I lived in an apartment complex that wasn't great, I was pretty broke. Not unlike now, really. But at the time I was broke. And I covered up the windows with tin foil. One, to have privacy because there wasn't any curtains. And two, because it kept the heat out. You know, living in California during the summertime, summer lasts quite a long time. And it gets really hot. It gets into the hundreds. So, because it was expensive to turn on the air conditioning, which I did have, thank God. But it was expensive to have it on all day. So what I would do is I covered the windows with a tin foil to reflect the heat so it'd stay cooler longer in the mornings, and I wouldn't have to turn on the air conditioning until around 3 or 4 in the afternoon. And then I'd leave it on till around 7 or 8. And it turns on and off when it cools down, and then it turns back on when it needs it again. But yeah, that would be normally how I would do it. But the tin foil on the windows was to reflect the heat so it wouldn't get so hot inside of my apartment. Could it have been as simple as that? Because Gypsy had stated a few times at least that she used to take out the garbage, and when she did that, she didn't use her wheelchair. So my guess is that people in the neighborhood might have had some idea that she didn't need the wheelchair all the time. I mean, there's a lot of people who have disabilities and they can walk, but because it takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of time, they get tired very easily, they use the wheelchair instead just to get around easier, and then when they're at home they walk because then they can take their time. If they have to sit and rest for a minute, they can do that. So I wonder about the people in her neighborhood. Did they really think that she had to stay in the wheelchair? Because we know that Dan knew that she didn't, and certainly we know that Nick knew that she didn't. I just wonder how many other people knew that maybe she didn't need the wheelchair 100% of the time. But getting back to the windows, did you ever use tinfoil on your windows to reflect the heat so it made the place, your house, your apartment, whatever your home might be, cooler? Because I know I sure did. And to me, that seems to be the simplest explanation. We know that Dee Dee wasn't a rich woman. She and Gypsy lived off of SSI and SSD, I believe. DI, that's what it is. So they weren't, making the big bucks or anything. To me, that would seem reasonable. It's a cheap, inexpensive way of keeping the home a little bit cooler. I don't know. All this, the more that I hear about the FOIAs and about the emails and all of that, I feel like we go into some of these things and make it super complicated, and I don't think it is. I think a lot of this stuff isn't complicated. I think, at least from what I've heard, it would make sense to put tinfoil on the windows to keep the house from being too hot. That makes sense to me. A lot of things. I mean, the more that I hear emails, the more I think, yeah, I knew that. I mean, it's good to have evidence, and I hope to God that somebody in the judicial system will also listen and maybe bring her back and force a trial and put her back in her place where she belongs. That would be really nice. But all the emails are doing is just confirming what we already knew. Gypsy likes lots of attention, lots of male attention, loves to flirt, loves sex, she's overly sexual, and she likes to manipulate people to get her way. We know all this. And there was in the FOIAs, I can't remember who pointed it out, forgive me. If I remember or if you remember, let me know and then I will make a mention in the description. But somebody had mentioned that in the FOIAs, Gypsy talked about how trying to say this in the PC way, how the jabs in the neck almost took her mother's head off, and yet she was never told about those things. So how did she know? Remember, she claims to be hiding in a bathroom the whole time. So how did she know about all the cuts at the back of the neck that almost cut Dee Dee's head off? How did she know that? Gee, suspicious minds wonder, don't they? But we know who we're dealing with. It's good to get evidence. Certainly if somebody in the courts would pull up all this information and bring her to trial, a federal trial, whatever it takes, that would be awesome, because she should be in jail. Just the fact that she is, well, okay, I can't say she is definitely. What I can say is that in the videos and clips that we see of Gypsy and Ken, Aurora looks like she's being abused. Okay, I can't say definitively that that's what's happening because I'm not there. But it looks suspicious and it should be looked into. The fact that they don't buckle the poor little baby Aurora in when they're driving recklessly, that should be looked at too. Now again, I can only say what I've seen from the little clips and videos and things that they themselves put out. Okay? And for all I know, it's all fake and phony. For all I know, there's no baby. There's no baby Aurora. It's just a doll. For all I know. But if I were, I don't know, say a police officer in Louisiana, I don't know, maybe look it up. Maybe check to make sure that they know how to do it. Maybe check to make sure that the baby, Aurora, if there is one, isn't showing any disturbing signs that could possibly come up due to doing inappropriate chemicals in front of her. Again, don't know if that's happened or not. I can't judge because I can only talk about what I've seen and what it looks like. And we have to remember, Gypsy is always really good at presentation. Now, has she faltered because she doesn't understand what a bad presentation it is to hold her baby while it's screaming or to buckle the seat incorrectly? She may not be aware. Nobody has trained her. She didn't take any courses that I am aware of except for how to drive. She should have been taking parenting classes. And why the judicial system didn't force her to take parenting classes because she murdered her mother, that doesn't make sense to me either. Because usually somebody who is a convicted murderer has to be watched over very carefully if they have children. Why this isn't going on, or at least doesn't seem to be going on, is very questionable. Maybe there isn't a baby. Maybe it's all a lie. Maybe, as one commenter said, maybe it's a cousin's baby or something. You know, we don't know. We only know what is being presented, what we see in front of us. And it's all very suspicious. There's a lot of questions that they need to be answered. Why aren't they? There's supposed to be a law in Louisiana that I read anyway that said if a convicted murderer has a child, that CPS has to be on it and visit them regularly throughout the life of the child to make sure the child is safe. Do they not do that because Ken is there? You know, there's so many questions that I have. And again, it's because of what Gypsy presents to us. Again, it could all be lies. Or it could be the truth. Or it could be a mix of both. Who knows? That's the problem. We don't know. But you'd think the judicial system would pay a little more attention. And maybe they are and just not talking about it. But then why isn't baby Aurora taken away? I mean, if you have a father who has addiction issues and a mother who probably has similar addiction issues as well as being convicted of a heinous crime, you'd think they'd pay attention to that. But then we've also noticed that Aurora the baby isn't with him that much. So where does the baby go when they're taking all these trips and doing all these things without Aurora the baby? I mean, there's a lot of questions here that I'd love to have answered. But asking Ken or Gypsy, probably not a good idea, because if any words come out of their mouth, at least 50% of it is a lie. We've noticed that already. We've seen that already. We've seen that with Christy. We've seen that with Rod and his, all his cheating ways. He's obviously not someone you can rely on either. And Raina, I don't know enough about Raina, Ken's mom. So I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't know. But Christy, I find her interesting because I find that if anybody's going to crack, it's going to be her first. I think that she has a dislike for Gypsy. That's my opinion. That I'm not saying that's fact. I'm saying that's my opinion. But I think if anyone cracks, it's going to be her first. But I would love to have these answers. I would love to have these questions answered. And, know the truth. When are we ever going to get to the truth? But as I said in the beginning, I know that I put tinfoil on my windows to keep the heat out. Do you think it's probably just that simple? I know Gypsy likes to make everything complicated and she loves to stir up drama. And Ken, I think, is very similar in that way. Or he just likes to make things up on the fly so that it looks like he knows what he's talking about. But the truth is, it's probably just to keep the heat out. That's my guess. Anyway, I'm continuing to find answers to the questions that we have. And hopefully we'll get something will be resolved. Fingers crossed. I just want Aurora the baby to be safe. Honestly, that's my biggest thing. I would love to have Ken and Gypsy go where they belong, but without Aurora, because I think Aurora, well, let's give her a chance to have a nice life. You know, that's my feeling on it. I'm sure you feel similarly. If you don't, let me know. I'm curious. Anyway, thank you for listening, and that's all I got to say.